Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Garen, like guarantee, not Sharon, Karen, Aaron, Bobaron, it's Garen with a G. I've been practicing making a new handle design that I came up with, kind of by necessity. I've been making and selling these fly press handles on my website, and every time I make a handle, I get about this much steel that's an offcut that's just left over, and they've been piling up underneath the fly press. And you know, last week I was just wondering, well, what can I do with these things? I knew I wanted to do something with them, whether machining or blacksmithing, but I decided to, and I came up with a design to do a new handle. It's robust, feels good in the hand, it's heavy duty, and my first project with this new handle design is kind of a freestyle fireplace tool set. Poker, shovel, brush, and I'm almost done with it. A lot of mistakes, a lot of learning in the process. So I'm going to bring you guys in now. We're going to forge this piece of raw material out to that same handle design today. In fact, I'll swing over here, you'll see the finished product and you'll see my process. If you guys have any comments or suggestions to improve it, that's cool. If maybe there's something for you to learn or me to learn too. So let's take a look at what I've got so far. Here's the general handle design. I started with a fire poker. This is a really nice firm grip. That's probably what, 3/4. Let's see here. Again, this is all freestyle. Yeah, 3/4. This is 3/4 by 3/4 by about 4 inches in handle. And then on the end here, I've got this little metal curved over and wrapped around. This was my first one, and I didn't know how much metal to start with. It wasn't enough to get the wraparound that I wanted. On the next two, it looks a lot better. This is what I'm going for. This loop here, wrapped around first, and then this little tail coming around there, even overlapping the handle. That's what I want. This one, it comes down, but I want this below that. I want this to go down, and then the curlicue, or the little tail here, to wrap around there. That's the look I'm going for. But this is still good. You know, you can hang this, whatnot. I'm going to center punch this stock right about 1 3/4 here, and that'll give me an aiming point to start my handle. Okay, and for most of this heavy work, I'm going to be using the 50-ton press and my new drawing and flattening die that I made. Set up properly with the right top and bottom die, the 50-ton press is a really controlled way to do some of this work. So we'll showcase that. I'm also going to showcase using my Smithin Magician. I've got some butcher dies and basically to isolate this material, okay, and then in preparation to draw this out. So it's gonna it'll be 3/8 round here, and then it'll draw out to about 1/8 inch, just by eye, not a big deal. And then that'll allow me to forge in this loop and then wrap it around. And then again, using the Smithin Magician with some round fuller dies, I'm going to set this finger rest. I mean, you'll see. That's the general process. With that center punch mark, I'll know where to start my handle, and then I'm going to draw that out a little bit and flatten it on the press. And then on the Smithin Magician, I'll do this part and this part. Okay, so here are the dangers of trying to smith on camera. And, you know, I only have myself to blame, but that's the basic process, although I need new tongs. I need different tongs adapted to this round bar. I screwed up and went too far. Took too much material off here. I know I'm not going to have enough to draw out what I want, unfortunately. And then this went trapezoidal on me. I don't know if you picked that up in the camera. I was able to save it. I've got enough experience on the 50 ton with these new dies. I got it back to square. And then, yeah, so, you know, I'm going to keep going and see if I can salvage this. We'll see how long that little curly Q gets. So next step, let's butcher in that and we'll draw that out. Maybe we'll go for a 1/4 inch round so we can get a little more length out of it. So I have an easier way to grab onto this. I'm going to square this up so I can use these tongs on this other side a little more securely. Okay, so it's amazing how much longer this is by going down to the 1/4 inch diameter versus the 3/8 that I did on the last two. I probably could have just kept the 3/8 in retrospect, but that's okay. This is by far the longest. Looks like it's about 10 inches. And sorry about the noise. I think everyone on the planet right now near me is mowing the lawn. This is by far the longest that I've drawn this out. And so this next part is for me the hardest. To start this little eyelet here, and then heat by heat rotating it around this. I don't have a torch, so I'll have to keep putting it back in the forge and using some different tongs and having it in the vise. I'll eventually get there, so I'll show you some of that. All done. Definitely harder to do on camera. The first three I did off camera, obviously. I had zero issues. Just kidding. I had my little issues here, but it's a salvageable handle. This was definitely the hardest part. The handle fits well. I like the finger well. All that I have to do left is taper this out, decide what I want to do. I think with this one I'm going to do a spatula, maybe a weaponized spatula. I've got some 1045 steel. I can widen that out into a little spatula blade, put an edge on one side, and maybe harden it and temper it. Be cool for me. But like I said before, this was definitely the hardest part for me. Maybe not making the loop, but keeping the loop there, wrapping this around. It's delicate. I don't have a torch, so I'm back and forth between the forge and the vise. But every time I do it, I learn a little bit, and I get a little bit better. In the future, I'm going to make sure that instead of 1/4 inch, I did 1/4 inch this time because I didn't think I had enough material, and I ended up with way too long of a little piece of metal to work with. It might have been cool to loop once or twice and then go down the handle. That might have been cool. Maybe it's something that I visit in the future. But I like the design I have there. So that calls for 3/8 at the base, tapered down to about 1/8 of an inch. Maybe 6 to 8 inches in length, but 10 inches was way too long. But yeah, other than that, I think this went pretty well. Anyway, I love the handle. Nice and tough, strong, feels good in the hand. Tell me what you think in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.